Good morning. I hope that everyone is doing really good today. And I know I've given you 2 assignments this week, and just in case they're feeling like they're kind of difficult to complete, I just want to help you along with them a little bit. So we're tackling a pretty big topic right now, which is photosynthesis and breaking it down into light reactions and dark reactions and exactly what's happening here. And so this crash course video, even though it's really complex, I've pared down what he's saying to a very basic level so that we could try to just kind of get some basics on what he's talking about. Like I said at the bottom of my notes, when I was in school, this is a when I was your age story. When I was in school, we had to memorize every detail of this reaction, know exactly how many NADPHs are going in and how many protons are coming out or electrons are coming out and how many are passed along the electron chain and all of that. I don't find value in making you memorize that process at all. However, to be able to break it down on some level, we have to be able to do that. And so that's why I chose a storybook as our reason for doing that. So I took the notes and I said, okay, what do we have to know on a very basic level? And so even though this is a 12-minute video, broke it down into about 15 or 16 statements. And so I'm going to walk through that with you right now. And then afterwards, I'm going to show you how you lay out the backbone for your storybook. So we're going to start watching the video, and I'm going to stop him every time he answers a question for you. So I hope you have your video notes out with you, and you're ready to watch this video together with me so that we can stop and fill things in as we go. All right, let's get started.
Some kind of abstract scientific thing. You would be dead without plants and their magical, nay, scientific ability to convert sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water into glucose and pure, delicious oxygen. This happens exclusively through photosynthesis, a process that was developed 450 million years ago and actually rather sucks. It's complicated, inefficient, and confusing, but you are committed to having a better, deeper understanding of our world, or more probably, you'd like to do well on your test, so let's delve. There are 2 sorts of reactions in photosynthesis.
Actually, I'm realizing the very first thing on the paper is to know what the formula is for the process of photosynthesis, and I taught you that in 7th grade. We memorized it, and in everything that you did last week with this chapter, you should have gotten it brought to the forefront of what you remember. We know that plants need carbon dioxide, we know they need water, and we know they need sunlight. In the balanced formula, we know that they need 6 molecules of CO2. We know that they need 6 molecules of H2O. We know they need the sunlight energy. And if they have these things, they'll be able to make 1 molecule of glucose, which is C6H12O6, and 6 molecules of oxygen, which is O2. So that's your first step, which is the formula. He just talked about how it takes place in 2 parts, and so let's see what those 2 parts are.
The light-dependent reactions and the light-independent reactions, and you've probably already figured out the difference between
That's the first
2,
blank.
So that's nice. The light-independent reactions are called the Calvin cycle. Yes, that Calvin cycle. Photosynthesis is basically respiration in reverse, and we've already covered respiration, so maybe you should just go watch that video backwards. Or you could keep watching this one. Either way, I've already talked about what photosynthesis needs in order to work: water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. So how do they get those things? First, water. Let's assume that we're talking about a vascular plant here. That's the kind of plant that has pipe-like tissues that conduct water, minerals, and other materials to different parts of the plant. These are like trees and grasses and flowering plants. In this case, the roots of the plants absorb the water and bring it to the leaves through tissues called xylem. Carbon dioxide gets in and oxygen gets out through tiny pores in the leaves called stomata. It's actually surprisingly important that plants keep oxygen levels low inside of their leaves for reasons that we will get into later. And finally, individual photons from the sun are absorbed in the plant by a pigment called chlorophyll. All right, you remember plant cells? If not, you could go watch the video where we spend the whole time talking about plant cells. One thing that plant cells have that animal cells don't: plastids. And what is the most important plastid? The chloroplast, which is not, as it is sometimes portrayed, just a big fat sack of chlorophyll. It's got complicated internal structure.
Now, as he's about to talk about the internal structures of the chloroplast, one of the things he's going to mention is something we don't talk about again until we get to the light-independent reaction. But he's going to talk about the chloroplast itself, what these little stacks are called, what each little disc is called, and what this empty space in here is called. And pay attention to the empty space because that's going to be a part of the light-independent reaction later.
Chlorophyll is stashed in membranous sacs called thylakoids, and the thylakoids are stacked into grana. Inside the thylakoid is the lumen, and outside of the thylakoid, but still inside of the chloroplast, is the stroma.
So he's going to talk about the stroma later, but remember, that's going to be outside of the actual chlorophyll, but still inside the chloroplast. That's the stroma.
Thylakoid membranes are phospholipid bilayers, which, if you remember, means that they are really good at maintaining concentration gradients of ions and proteins and other things. This means keeping a concentration higher on one side than the other of the membrane. You're going to need to know all of these things. I'm sorry. Now that we've taken our little tour of the chloroplast, it's time to get down to the actual chemistry. First thing that happens, a photon.
Number one.
By the fusion reactions of our sun.
He said that a photon is created by, right there at 246, he told you what it was created by.
Is about to end its 93 million mile journey by slapping into a molecule of chlorophyll.
He just told you what the green pigment that it's going to strike is called there at 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Going on to number 2.
This kicks off stage 1, the light-dependent reactions, proving that, yes, nearly all life on our planet is fusion-powered. When chlorophyll gets hit by that photon, an electron absorbs that energy.
He just told you what absorbs the energy on number 2, and he's about to tell you what's going to happen to it. It says, and gets
excited. This is the technical term for electrons gaining energy and not having anywhere to put it, and when it's done by a photon, it's called photoexcitation.
He just told you what it's called. This is also called.
But let's just imagine, for the moment anyway, that every photon is whatever dreamy young man 12-year-old girls are currently obsessed with, and electrons are 12-year-old girls. The trick now, and the entire trick of photosynthesis, is to convert the energy of those electrons into something that the plant can use. We are literally going to be spending the entire rest of the video talking about that. I hope that that's okay with you. That first chlorophyll is not on its own here. It's part of an insanely complicated complex of proteins and lipids and other molecules called photosystem 2 that contains at least 99 different chemicals, including over 30 individual chlorophyll molecules. This is the...
Notice I didn't ask you any questions about PS2. I know it's very complicated, and I'm not wanting us to get that complicated, but I did state that it happens.
First of 4 protein complexes that plants need for the light-dependent reactions. And if you think it's complicated that we call the first complex photosystem 2 instead of photosystem 1, then you're welcome to call it by its full name, which is plastoquinone oxoreductase. Oh, no, you don't want to call it that? Right then, photosystem 2. Or, if you want to be brief, PS2. PS2 and indeed all of the protein complexes in the light-dependent reactions straddle the membrane of the thylakoids in the chloroplasts. Now that excited electron is going to go on a journey designed to extract all of its new energy and convert that energy into useful stuff. This is called the electron transport chain, in which energized electrons lose their energy in a series of reactions that capture the energy necessary to keep life living. So PS2's chlorophyll now has this electron that is so excited that when a special protein designed specifically for stealing electrons shows up, the electron actually leaps off of the chlorophyll molecule onto the protein, which we call a mobile electron carrier because it's a mobile electron carrier. The chlorophyll then freaks out like a mother who has just had her 12-year-old daughter abducted by a teen idol and is like, what do I do to fix this problem? And then it, in cooperation with the rest of photosystem 2, does something so amazing and important that I can barely believe that it keeps happening every day. It splits that ultra-stable molecule, H2O, stealing one of its electrons to replenish the one it lost.
So it splits the blank molecule. Just told you the name of the molecule that it splits. Well, it's water, and we know that the two things that water are made up of is hydrogen and oxygen. So what's it splitting it into? What are those two blanks for? H and O. Now, I want to draw attention to the fact that if you have a lake of water and you want to split the water molecules in that lake, the amount of energy required to accomplish that is striking it with lightning. Okay, so that's how much energy is required to split a water molecule. And so if you can wrap your brain around the fact that this excited photon has caused the electrons to be so energized that they split a water molecule, that gives you an idea of how much energy is going on here and is required to make this process be driven. Okay, so he's going to tell you what's going to happen with the oxygen, and we know, so let's listen to that.
The byproducts of this water splitting, hydrogen ions, which are just single protons, and oxygen. Sweet, sweet oxygen. This reaction, my friends, is the reason that we can breathe.
So that was number 5. I want you to go ahead and cross through number 6, because he's going to go on this rant about chemical energy and food. And so really the hydrogen is a hydrogen ion that's going to eventually become a part of the glucose molecule, which is the chemical energy in food. So just cross out number 6. We don't need it. He's going to go on this little rant, and we're going to skip on to when he says the electron transport chain. So that's going to be right about 5 minutes and 53 seconds. So let's start listening to what he has to say there.
Now remember, all energized electrons from PS2 have been picked up by electron carriers and now are being transported to the second protein complex, the cytochrome complex. This little guy does 2 things. 1, it serves as an intermediary between PS2 and PS1, and 2, it uses a little bit of that energy from the electron to pump another proton into the thylakoid. So the thylakoid's starting to fill up with protons. We've created some by splitting water, and we moved one in using the cytochrome complex, but why are we doing this? Well, basically what we're doing is charging the thylakoid like a battery. By pumping the
All right, he just told you what we're charging the thylakoid like for number 7. So go ahead and answer that. And so we're going to be listening to see what that's going to put together.
Thylakoid full of protons, we're creating a concentration gradient. The protons then naturally want to get the heck away from each other, and so they push their way through an enzyme straddling the thylakoid membrane called ATP synthase.
Oh, he hadn't said it yet.
And that enzyme uses that energy to pack an inorganic phosphate onto ADP, making ATP.
He just said what you made. He said 3 letters of what's made right there.
The big daddy of cellular energy. All of this moving along the electron transport chain requires energy, and as you might expect, electrons are entering lower and lower energy states as we move along. This makes sense when you think about it. It's been a long while since those photons zapped us. We've been pumping hydrogen ions to create ATP. It's splitting water and jumping onto different molecules. I'm tired just talking about it. Luckily, as 450 million years of evolution would have it, our electron is now about to get re-energized upon delivery to photosystem 1. So PS1 is a similar mix of proteins and chlorophyll molecules that we saw in PS2, but with some different products. After a couple of photons re-excite a couple of electrons, the electrons pop off and hitch a ride onto another electron carrier. This time, all of that energy will be used to help make NADPH, which, like ATP, exists solely to carry energy around. Here, yet another enzyme helps combine 2 electrons and 1 hydrogen ion with a little something called NADP+. As you may recall from our recent talk about respiration, there are these sort of distant cousins of B vitamins that are crucial to energy conversion. In photosynthesis, it's NADP+, and when it takes on those 2 electrons and 1 hydrogen ion, it becomes NADPH. So what we're left with now, after the light-dependent reactions, is chemical energy in the form.
Okay, he's about to tell you the answer to number 9, what we're left with here at the end of the light reaction.
Of ATPs and NADPH.
He said we're going to have this right here, and this right here. And also, of course, we're going to have the byproduct, or the useless byproduct of.
And also, of course, we should not forget the most useful, useless byproduct in the history of useless byproducts, oxygen. If anybody needs a potty break, now would be a good time.
So run and have a potty break. Da-da-da-da-da. All right, let's move on to the next part.
Or if you want to go rewatch that rather long and complicated bit about light-dependent reactions, go ahead and do that. It's not simple, And it's not going to get any simpler from here. Because now we are moving along to the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle.
Okay, so that was, we're in light independent reactions, and he just told you the name of the cycle. And they're also called what?
It's sometimes called the dark reactions, which is kind of a misnomer because they generally don't occur in the dark. They occur in the day along with the rest of the reactions. But they don't require energy from photons.
That was the answer to number 1.
So it's more proper to say light-independent reactions. Or if you're feeling non-descriptive, just say stage 2. Stage 2 is all about using the energy from those ATPs and NADPHs that we created in stage 1 to produce something that's
He's about to tell you where they begin.
The Calvin cycle begins in the stroma, or the empty space inside of the chloroplast, if you remember correctly. And this phase is called carbon fixation because, yeah, we're about to fix a CO2 molecule onto our starting point, ribulose bisphosphate.
He just told you what it was called.
It's always around in the chloroplast because not only is
they're at 9 minutes even.
It's also the end point, which is why it's a cycle. CO2 is fixed to RUBP.
Just so you know, he's about to go through this whole process of Rubisco and everything that happens with Rubisco. And I'm going to skip through that process because he feels a duty to explain to you what is happening to this carbon all along the way. But we're going to skip right to the part where he's going to tell us what's going to happen with that Rubisco. And he tells you Rubisco is one of the biggest byproducts of the light independent reaction, but we're not going to focus on that. I'll tell you at 11 minutes and 46 seconds is where he's going to name the molecule that you're going to write in the second blank on number 4. So listen for 11 minutes and 46 seconds.
Here, we need some energy. So some ATP slams a phosphate group onto the 3-phosphoglycerate, and then NADPH pops some electrons on, and voila! We have 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, or G3P.
And you can simply write the simple molecule there that he called it, that was a letter, a number, and a letter. Okay, so eventually, number 5, the carbon is going to be formed into a 6-carbon molecule that we know of called...
This is a high-energy 3-carbon compound that plants can convert into pretty much any carbohydrate, like glucose.
There's your answer for number 5. Okay, so we'll go ahead and stop the video there. Because it's pretty much the basis of what he needs to tell you. Now, we need to go to our rubric and see, what do I do with this information? How do I turn this into a storybook that you've asked me to make, okay? And so the best way to do that is to look at what the requirements are and then kind of lay out a plan for your storybook. Okay, well, it tells me I need a cover page including title, illustration, and your name and period, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a plan. You can see right here, Layla's been making face masks. Right here on my plan, so I'm going to kind of lay out the pages of my book. Okay, I'm just going to go like this. So page 1, that's just going to be my cover page that I said I needed, okay? And then it says I'm going to need the original energy source for photosynthesis, okay? So, I need to go ahead and do this in a 2-part series because my husband just asked me to go be a part of a video doctor's appointment he's being a part of. So I'll come back and finish this video.